Hello and welcome to another SolidWorks tutorial. Today we're going to be looking at something quite complicated, so it's probably going to be quite a long video. I'll walk through it step by step. We're going to look at how to make a design table driven part. What we're going to do is we're going to use this technical drawing for a spanner. It's available off the team's website. It's quite complex to doing the design table side, but it's not that hard of a part. So we're going to start off by making the part. You have to make quite careful really when you're making the part to make sure you build it in the right sort of order so that the table can properly change the dimensions for you. So I'm just going to build it first and explain it as I go. So start off with, we're going to do each end of this ring spanner. So just start off with the top plane. I'm going to start myself actually with a midpoint line, but it is going to be for construction, so I'm going to use the construction tool here. Start off my origin, give me a length. And then at each end of that, I'm just going to stick a nice circle. Okay, so I'm going to start dimensioning it from here. Now, crucial thing here is, what we're actually going to do is going to add names to our dimensions. So this is the distance between centres here. So this is going to be 110, and I'm going to call it centres. Okay. So we can see straight away there that it's changed it from D1 at sketch 1 to centres at sketch 1. So this is now the centres dimension. I'm going to smart dimension the circles. So this is going to be my larger end here. This is 18. So this is rather than D1 here again, this is going to be larger diameter. Take that. And this is going to be the smaller diameter, and the smaller diameter is 16. So that's our two circles at each end. I'm going to go from there. Obviously, they're two separate bodies currently, but that's not too much of a problem, so I'm just going to end my sketch. Now, this is the tricky part because I want them to be two different thicknesses. What I'm actually going to do is click on here on the selected contours, clear out what's in there, just right click, clear selection, and I'm just going to select inside this one. So it's only selecting this closed sketch. Stick it to mid-plane. So this is the larger end, and the larger end has a thickness of 5.5. Okay. So I want to do the other end as well. Now obviously it automatically hides a sketch once you've used it. So to use the same sketch again, that's fine. All you got to do is expand it out on the feature manager here. You've got sketch 1, you can highlight it again and do a new extrude. So same process again, select the contours, clear, select inside the other one this time, mid-plane, and this one is 5mm. So that's quite happily done both of those. Now what I do need to do though obviously is I want that thickness to change along with everything else, or along with certain other things. So what I'm going to do is edit those dimensions as well. So to do that, to make my life easy, up on here on the feature manager you've got annotations. If you right click on it, you can show feature dimensions, and this then brings all of them up. So I've got this 5 here, this 5.5. So what I'm going to do, you should in theory be able to click on it, but every time I do it does this, and if you double click on it it would come up same as the other one. So at this point you could do larger thickness. So that would sort that end. Now with the other one, I'm going to show you the other way. What I tend to find works quite well is if you just grab it and drag rather than trying to click, you don't get that sort of quick change menu come up. You do get the detailed options come up on the left, and you can change that there as well. So that can be smaller, thick, and just tick it. There we go. Now obviously it's quite irritating with the dimensions, so I'm just going to turn them back off again for the time being. So So that's that bit nice and simple. Next step really is to do, I feel, the shaft. Now it's important here that you remember that both of these aren't the same thickness, so they don't have the same starting point. So I'm just going to carry on working off that top plane that I selected first, because that goes through the middle. So that's a known entity, I know where that is. So extrude again on that one, just normal 2. And here basically I want to add a rectangle in. Now, common problem here is people think, oh, I want to add a rectangle, I'm going to attach it to the middle and draw a centre rectangle out. Now that's fine until you get to the problem of, say, if you attach it onto this end, you can see on the right hand end then it doesn't actually connect to the circle. So it's sort of counterproductive. So what can work better is if you still use a centre rectangle, and all you have to do is lock the origin to the centre point of your rectangle, make them horizontal. That way when you come down here you can quite happily lock this one here, and you can lock this one onto here. That way it keeps it all nice and central, so when I give that dimension of 10, it's locked it onto both circles, so we keep the reference, and it's also kept the centres lined up, so it means that 10 is the same each side, but it has moved the centre of the rectangle off the origin like it needs to create a whole part, so that's all good. Hammer sketch, the thick part of the body is 4mm. Again, just need to remember to make it mid-plane so it sits in the middle nicely. There we go, so now we've got our basic shape. Next I think we're going to do the hexagons, so the actual openings for the spanner, make it actually work. So I'm just going to spin round to normal 2. So now we're going to extrude cut these bits out. So it's very complex holes, so we're going to start with extrude cut. I'm going to select this face first because I want it to be here. I could do the same as I've done with the others, and I'll just expand this one out and select the top plane, I think, actually. By doing that, it's obviously going to be in the middle, that way I can do both at the same time. You've got your Polygon tool here. Polygon's a very useful shape. All angles and lengths of the sides are the same, so it makes it very easy to do very regular shapes. 6 sides obviously makes it a hexagon. You can start it from the middle. I'm just going to pull one hexagon off here, and I'm going to use the same centre point and pull one hexagon this way. Now by doing it so you've got 1 point vertical and 1 point horizontal, you get 2 hexagons there that overlap nicely. Now to make sure they stay there, I'm going to click that point. Actually I'm going to use centre line, it's a bit more obvious. Click on that point, click on the centre, and click on that tip there. So that way I've got my horizontal and I've got my vertical, and that stops my hexagon spinning. Now obviously what you also want to do is do the sizing. This is what I was talking about earlier with making sure that we think about the dimensioning. Now obviously these 2 hexagons want to be the same size, so I could throw 2 smart dimensions on there. I could throw one on here like this, make this 11, and then I could throw another one on here and make this 11 as well. But then the problem is I have to change both of these all the time, so I'd have to have 2 different dimensions. Well, in actual fact I don't need it. So you could either do it so that this dimension equals the other one, or my personal favourite, because it's a little bit neater I think, is if you click this line on the blue one that's now not defined, and you click one of the black lines that is defined, you can make those equal. That way anytime you change this dimension, as demonstrated here, it changes both of them the same. So let's just make that 11, and then this is going to be the AF, or cross faces value. Put it in the right box helps. So there you go, up in here, there we go, A/F, the cross faces, and that's going to be my larger. There we go. There we go, so that's that nicely done. Now, as I said, we can just pin down the other end. Now we have to be careful here. A lot of people ask me whether they can just mirror it or pattern it down because it's the same shapes again. It is, but you do not want them to be the same size, do you? So because you don't want to be the same size, they have to be drawn again. And in reality, it's not that long to draw it again, is it? So one that way, one that way. I'm going to use my centre line as a construction line again, to there, to there. Didn't get them perfect this time, so that one just needs to be horizontal. I'm going to make that one and that one equal. That way I can just throw one smart dimension from that line to the opposite one, and that can be 10. I forgot to name it. That can be EF. There we go. So now I've got both sets nicely done, nice and easy. So therefore I'm going to end my sketch. Now this is the tricky bit. Because you have drawn two hexagons, so we've used two shapes, we've got lots and lots of closed drawings. So what we're going to do is we're going to clear the selected contours. I'm going to go around and we're going to have to select each as they're called regions. So I'm going to select inside this one, so you see, so it's region 1. Then I'm click in there, and there, and there. And there is no alternative to this really. This is the only way that this works really well. You've got to go around and select each one. Now, as I've done both at the same time, what you have to be careful of is your computer is man enough to handle this. A lot of the college computers will crash at this point if you're trying to select this many regions. But if it obviously doesn't work, you could always do one end and then reuse the sketch again like we've done before. There we go. So I've got all my regions selected, and then I'm just going to do through all both and tick. Here we go. I've now created this sort of overly shaped star. Now it is important that you make sure that you don't try and be clever about it. I've had a few people try trimming the lines using other tricks that I've taught you in the past. Tricks are always good, but they have to do the job. And unfortunately with this one, because you want the shape to remain, and so we can drive it, you need to make sure that these stay solid, because if you start trimming lines away, they won't move properly and they won't change properly later on, which obviously is the whole point of this one. So we've got our two ends. Add a little bit of detail now, I think, to just make it look a bit neater. We're going to extrude, cut on here. Going to throw a nice little slot in from the middle. Again, actually, don't want a middle one, because if I fall for the same trick I did with the rectangle, I don't want it attached to the middle. So I'm just going to throw in a slot, and this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to dimension it from the point here to the end here. You can see we can get the little midpoint to come up there. There we go. 112. Do the same this end. Now you have to be careful. If you rush it and just click the edge, it will do it to the centre of the circle, as is its default. So if you just wait, be patient, wait for that midpoint sign to come up, you can then attach it to the edge instead. I want this to be 2 mil. There we go. So that's obviously quite happy now. That's fully defined. I'm going to cut that in 0.5 mil. Doesn't need to be much, it's just there to add a little bit of shape to it. There we go. I'm going to add some fillets in now as it shows on there. So fillet, these big ones are 15s, so that's that edge. I'll use the little quick menu. Yeah, that picks the 4 corners I want. Yeah, starting to look very much like a spanner now. Then it just says to put a little 0.5 on the edges, just to round it off nicely. It does also say in the bottom of there. There we go. So that gives it a nice bit of definition. I haven't done the same on the other side, so with my little uncut, so I'm just going to mirror that quickly. So select my top plane, because I want it to mirror around there. Mirror, select my features. Now I could just click in here because I want 2 features to keep life simple. I'm going to come onto here and do, I want that last cut and that last fillet. I want fillet 1, don't I? No, it was fillet 2. There we go. There we go, so that way I've got a nice equal looking spanner. Although that has come up with a nice error. So that will be, let me edit that. Now that will be because it's trying to mirror stuff that already exists here. So I can fix that really easily. I'm just going to edit that feature and take off that mirror, or that line and that line, because that way when it mirrors it should build quite happily. Nope, it doesn't. It's not very happy, is it? Okay, let's try a different way then. See, it happens even to me. So let's delete the fillet. Just mirror. There we go. Just mirror that instead. I'm going to do another fillet on the bottom then. Okay, bottom of there, there, and there. There we go. Nice. So, last thing really to do with this before we try playing with the design tables is actually look at adding some text to this. There's some numbers. Again, this is a little bit fiddly, so we can take our time with it. Just going to start off with extrude. Make sure we click on the bottom plane there. Now, what I like to do is put some centre lines in because I like this to be nice and accurate. So we're going to select. There you go. Come down from this point here. Come down a little bit. Come over here. And we're going to do the same at the other end. Use that little trick I showed you earlier with the equals bit. I want that one and that one to be equal. And I want that one and that one to be equal. So therefore I only have to really dimension one side and it will do the other one for me. There we go. So cool. Now I know my text is going to be 3.5mm tall, so therefore I want half of that for the bottom of the text, so let's do 3.5 divided by 2, and I'm going to want that to just come along 15mm just so it looks neat. Okay, so what I've basically done there is I've just created basically a line to write on, which is the best way to describe that really. So we've got text up here, and what we can do is if we put something in here, so we've got 12, and let's go with 11 because that's actually what we want. We can make it bold. But also I want it to come over here somewhere. The easiest way to do that is to use this bit here, so select an edge or a sketch. So I'm going to select this line. There we go, and the text jumps straight onto it. You can teach its layout, so I can stick it in the middle of that line. If it came in the wrong way around, I could turn it over and spin it around, whatever I wanted. Now, what I want though is I don't want to just tell me that this is 11, I want it to change with the drawing. So instead of writing 11, I'm going to use this special button here that's linked to property. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a property for the number. So file properties, so I want to create a property, so property name, so new property, so this is the larger end, isn't it? So larger ring text. Okay. Now at this point, don't be tempted to use number, just because of what we're after, it just gets a bit confused. The easiest thing to do is just use text. Put in like the base value, so what we're working on currently would be 11, wouldn't it? And if you click out of it, it evaluates it to 11. That's just so we know it works. And here I'm going to put smaller. Again, make it text, and this time this one will be 10. So I've just done both of them, just so I've got them both. So we've got larger and smaller, and they're sort of their current values, and we can OK it. And then here we can select the property. So those two have now appeared on this list here. So this one I want to be larger, so hit larger. It says evaluated at 11, so that's OK. Hit OK. So even here in the box here, where we typed in 11 before, it's now got this weird bit of text that's linked in, 11 appears on the screen. So I'm going to just tick that one because that one's alright now. Text again, link properties. This time I can just use smaller spanner because it's already there. Okay, I want you to go on that line. Now this is the common problem, it's put the numbers upside down and back to front. That's what these buttons here are for. So you've got flip it up so it's on top of the line, turn it around so it's facing the right direction. Now also my 11's bold and my 10 is not, so I'm just going to highlight all of that and make sure I press the bold button. That way it comes in bold and it looks a lot better. Tick that one as well. There we go. So I've got both of those, and I just want to extrude those a little bit. It's 0.5 still, so that's all good. So there we go. So now we've got our text on there. Now hopefully this will mean that these will change automatically as we do our design table. Now that I'm happy with my spanner, what I strongly suggest you do is save this. Because to be honest, it's the part where it goes wrong. There you go, see I've got my test piece here, so spanner 2. So this is my default spanner now, basically this is what we've used as a start point. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create our design table. Best thing to do really at this point is just double check, make sure you've named every dimension that you're going to want to change. I'm pretty sure I've got all of them. I can just check it, might just go show feature dimensions and have a quick look through here. So I know I wanted that one, there we go, that one's got larger diameter, that one's got larger across faces, that's the thickness of this bit here. I haven't named that one. That one should be okay, I don't think that one needs to change particularly, although it would look silly, wouldn't it? So let's add that one in as well. So that would be body thickness. Extra N in there, there we go. So let's tick that one. There you go. So it's a good thing we did this, I spotted an extra one. These would all be a material because they want those to stay the same. Our 15 for our big radius on there is alright. We've got that one that's got a name, that one's got a name, that one's named, excellent. So yeah, I think we're all good. So let's just tick that. Let's just hide those again so they're not in the way. So first step then, obviously just resave, is to insert a design table. So it's just as you would think, go up to the SolidWorks menu in the top left, insert, right down to tables, design table. So what I always suggest with this is we just leave it on auto create. You just tick it and it straight away tries to generate this for you, and what it wants you to do is select all the dimensions that you want to be changeable, which you want to be in this table so you can change them. Now the advantage is now, because you have named all of them, you can just go through and select all the ones you've named. So select one, hold control and just tick your way down the list. It doesn't matter if you pick up ones that you perhaps don't want, but I find it a lot easier if you've only got the named ones, only the ones that you want actually in the table. Otherwise you can change the other ones by accident. So I've made sure I've got them all. Okay. Now we've got our little design table in the corner here. It's very small. It's going to be quite hard to read, so let's just up the text size a little bit so we can see what's going on. There we go. So we now have a nice little Excel table that's opened up. A couple of problems people had actually with this is they were trying to use this and they didn't have Excel installed on their computer. Now obviously because this is using Excel for its formatting and everything, and for the actual driven bit of this, it's important you have Excel installed on the computer. So if you haven't got it, you can download it from the college website for free. So you just need to do that and then jump back to this bit. Okay, so next what we want to do is we basically want to set this table up. So our default spanner has these dimensions. So now what we want to do is basically create our next spanner, so our next set of dimensions. So 26, let's just make all this a little bit bigger text as well before we start, just so we can see what's going on. So this one, so my original one here is 10 and 11, isn't it? So I'm going to make my next one my 12 spanner, and my 14, my 16, and my 18. There we go. So I'm going to generate 4 new ones, so I'll have 5 in total. It's this bit that you can start to get a little bit creative, because basically you want new dimensions for all of these. So obvious ones at the end here, so it's across faces values. So you've got 10 and 11, and this would be our 10 one, wouldn't it? And sometimes I like to rename this one just to make life easy. So that's 10 because this is 10, and this is 11 because that's the other side. So this one would actually equal whatever I put in this one, wouldn't it? So that would be 12. And then I could, just rather than filling them out manually, just drag down. And then this one would equal that 12, but plus 1. My body thickness is currently 10. I said I might want that to just up a little bit, just as we go through. So I think actually, so if that's 10 because that's 10, I reckon, same again, actually if we just make that equal that, that will probably work quite nicely. So the smaller ring is a thickness of 5, so that's how thick that bit of material is there. That's 5, and I reckon, well, that's half of that, isn't it? Yeah, that should have been 5.5. Oh yeah, it's been rounded up, so it is 5.5. What if we make that a little bit? Okay, don't know. Okay, so it was 5.5 when I put it in. I'm not sure why it's displaying 6 there. It must be rounding up for some reason. Number. There you go. Number of decimal points used. Okay, so this one equals half of this value, and this one equals half of this value, doesn't it? So let's make that a thing. So that one divided by 2, and then let's do equals that one divided by 2. So that gives me a nice, sensible way, doesn't it? There you go. And then so this one's 16, and that's the diameter of that outside edge, isn't it? So that gives nice material. So that's just an extra 6 on top of that one, and that's an extra 8 on top of it. So let's just try that. So that one plus 6, and that would equal that one plus 8. There you go. So this is 110. So is that one just times 11, really, isn't it? Or it's 100 plus that one. What do we need? Does it need to be that much longer? Could be that much longer. So what would that be? So 11 times 12 at that point. That's quite a lot of extra. Well, let's try that one. So let's do that one times 11. 132, 83. I see. No, that seems like a lot to me. Let's not do that. Let's do it the other way. Let's do that one plus 100. Well, he's only 112. I think that one might be better. Now, if it ever does this to you where it sort of changes its mind, normally it's because you've put one in already. Just delete it off, make sure you've got general in that cell for your format up here, equals 100 plus 1. There we go. Sometimes if you change it, it sort of thinks it's text straight away, which is very irritating, but it's just something it does. Yeah, so I've got all of these. I'm just going to drag them all down at once then. There we go, so that's auto-generated all of those numbers for me. You could always just work it out in your head and just tick them through if you wanted to. It's down to you. I tend to use formulas just because it then means in theory if I wanted another one I could just grab the whole line and drag another one down, but whatever your preference is. So that'll do for me. And I'm just going to tick off this, and by clicking back into space it automatically generates them for you. So design table generated the following configurations. So I've got my 5 spanners. So you hit OK. Now obviously what you want to do is you want to see your spanners. To do that you go to the configuration manager, it's just here. Click on that and you can see now you've got all your different configurations. So currently we're on our default. We've got our 10 which should look identical. All you do is double click it. So yeah, that's our 10. Double click it again and you can see it just gets a little bit bigger. Again, a little bit bigger. Again, a little bit bigger. Excellent. Now, the only problem is, of course, the text isn't changing, which is expected, because we didn't actually select the text, because it didn't come up as an option. I'm not 100% sure why it doesn't come up on that first time, but it's very easy to solve. up on here on your configuration manager, you've got the tables tab and you've got design table. All you've got to do, right click it and edit your table. And when you go back into it, it asks you again, is there anything else you want to add? And at this point, yes, I'd like to add the extra parameters, and you've got large ring spanner text and small ring spanner text. So again, hold control, select both of them, hit OK, and this time they should appear at the end of my table. My table's gone nice and big this time, just to make life difficult. There we go. I'll have to drop all the text size down again, aren't we? So you can see quite clearly there that it stayed as 11 and 10, hasn't it, for the values? So it should just be a simple question of going, well, alright, that one is going to be 12 and that one's going to be 13. Now, as I said, you could do this as a formula, but I'm just going to do it by hand because at this point I think it's probably quicker. 19, there we go. So those are now my values for those bits of text. So again, just tick off it or click into space, it'll auto-generate. And because they already exist, it's quite happy. So this time I'm still on my 10, so let's click onto my 12. It's going to want me to rebuild because obviously we've done something there, so it's changed it. There you go, and the text changed automatically. Click on the next one. Yes, well, I'm just going to get bored of that, so I'm just going to tick don't show me again, so rebuild. And perfect. So that's then created my spanners. Obviously they're starting to look a little bit odd as they get a bit bigger. It's probably just because we haven't allowed for enough extra material and stuff. So at that point it's just down to how you influence that table and decide what you want to change and how you want to change it. But that is in a sense how you create a spanner driven by a design table to actually create multiple spanners. Now hopefully that'll help. I'd suggest trying it a few times, especially if you're going to attempt the evening class exam. Okay. Right. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again soon.